Most of us are familiar with the saying, they don't build them like they used to. Well, another part of that saying now is, they didn't make them as smart as they do now. So, how do we fix that? Hello, I'm Wanderer001 and this is my review of SmartDry, the smart home apparatus which you can make your old, non-smart dryer a smart dryer. There are other solutions for newer dryers that are brand and model specific, which is a module generally that you put into the smart area of the dryer. Pretty much that back panel is just computer board now. So I have a much older dryer that came with the house that I purchased, and I liked to smarten up my home, so the dryer was the next natural step for me, but I didn't want to get a new dryer. So here we are with SmartDry. This is a very simplistic modular solution that can be applied to any dryer. Whether it's a gas dryer, whether it's an electric dryer, it doesn't matter. It works with just 3 pieces and an app. So what I really appreciated about SmartDry is the simplicity of use, because they realize that the person who's going to be trying the SmartDry is probably not a super tech person, or this might be the first smart home device that they're getting. So here you go. They lay out pretty much what's inside this box when you open it. You have the SmartDry sensor, you have the power adapter, and you have the Smart Hub. And it's all laid out there for you. And it even has directions over in the corner and kind of gives you a step-by-step what you should be doing during the setup process. Now, the other thing that I like is when you take out that first panel, they provide you with everything. You already have the screwdriver, which you need to access the battery panel. They give you an extra battery, which is really great, and a little thank you from the team there, which is a nice touch, I will admit. Now, if you, like me, are concerned about having a battery-operated device inside of your dryer, well, one, I will say it is not a lithium-ion battery, so you do not have to worry about it overheating and exploding. And I have been testing this out for the last 2 months, regularly, doing my laundry, and I have had no issues whatsoever. Also, it is not, as I stated, a lithium-ion battery. So here on the back, you can actually see it's pretty much just a watch battery that sits inside of this and is held in place by a panel with 4 screws that tighten it in place. Now, I will say during the setup process, I had already tightened it down before the setup process, so it was a little trickier getting that flap to come out, but we'll talk about that during the setup process. Now, as I stated before, this is made up of 3 individual components. First being the SmartDry sensor. This is the part that sits inside of your dryer. And these little holes here allow it to use the 3 internal sensors, which are a temperature sensor, a humidity sensor, and, well, you have an accelerometer in there, but that doesn't need these holes. That is how this device can tell if your clothes are actually dry or not, or if your dryer has stopped, which is a great feature because, well, you, like me, probably have a dryer in the basement and you might not hear it running from your location, and you want to know if it stops. Not only do you want to know if your clothes are dry, but maybe you just want to know if it stopped. It's perfect for that. So the sensor itself is made up of a flat matte plastic, not shiny in any way, shape, or form. The back of the device has the door panel that I was talking about, which is where your battery is held. And these right here are 2 very strong magnets that hold it in place. And like I said, I have been testing this for the last 2 months and have not had any problems with it coming off or giving me false reads. Now, here you can see just how easily it sits in place with the magnets. This is also one of the preferred placement areas, which is covered in the installation later. The other 2 parts of this 3-part system are the SmartDry Hub and the power adapter. Now, the power adapter is pretty much just a standard power brick that you use to give power to the Smart Hub here. And in the front you have 2 LED lights, one for power, one for data, so when it's transmitting, you've got a reset button there, and then it's just a closed, chunky brick. I will say the build quality on this is a little, as you can see the board there for the USB connector is not quite sitting straight. So to me, that was a bit concerning. However, once you plug it in, you really don't need to unplug it. So this is not terrible. I have not run into any issues. I just kind of looked at it as startup problems, maybe. It's a relatively new company, and maybe some of the finer finessing touches will be worked out by the time you get this. All right, so let's talk about what setup of this was like. First, you are going to need to download the app to your smartphone, either through Google Play or your iOS store. And when you first open it up, the first thing it's going to ask you is it's going to say you need to allow location permissions during setup. You can turn them off afterwards, which I really appreciate that it only requests this during setup. And in fact, I can state that I did go back and remove the permission after I was set up, and this works perfectly fine. After that, it gives you a little privacy policy statement, which is nice. Moving on, it lets you know that this device operates on 2.4 gigahertz as opposed to the 5 gigahertz spectrum, which is fine because you don't need this to actually have faster speeds. You need it to have longer range. And I will say one of the interesting things is that the sensor that sits inside of your dryer does not actually stay connected to Wi-Fi. That was one of my concerns because the watch battery that's in here, I figured would die like that if it was constantly attached to the Wi-Fi network. Realistically, your hub here is what is attached to the Wi-Fi network, and this only periodically pings it during either dry cycles or when it stops spinning. The rest of the time, these two aren't talking to each other, which saves this battery quite a lot. In fact, if your dryer is not running at all, it's not sending any data to the hub. And I have actually unplugged this hub when not in use. So, you know, the one day a week I do the drying, I plug this back in. So once you've established that you have a 2.4 gigahertz network for it, you move on, and it tells you that the hub should be no more than 10 to 15 feet away. For most people, they have a plug that their dryer is plugged into. You can plug this into the other socket as long as it's not being utilized by your washer. Or you're not using an electric dryer that has a much higher voltage than what this can handle. After that, it tells you need to remove the paper tag that's behind the battery. This is where I said before, make sure that you don't tighten down the screws beforehand, because then that will be a little tricky, and I had to go back and I had to unscrew it to actually get the paper tag removed. After that, what it's going to do is it's going to scan for this sensor. Now for me, I had to do this twice. It didn't pick it up the first time. They call it provisioning, which is having these two talk. I had to provision twice in order to find my hub. Once it showed up on the app, it asks you for the Wi-Fi network credentials, so whatever network you're going to put this on, and after that, you're done. It's attached to your Wi-Fi network, and you can successfully use this. Now, it does also attach itself to Amazon Echo devices if you want. There is an extra step for that. I'll talk about that a little later. Once you've connected the device to your network, it then walks you through actual placement of the device. And then the last step is if you wanted to do the Amazon Echo integration. Now, myself, I did do this for the first couple of weeks that we had it. I wasn't as thrilled with the Echo integration. You can ask your Echo, is my dryer running? Is my dryer done? And you get a message that's sent to your account that blinks all of your Echo devices green, letting you know that the dryer is either done or the clothes in it are dry. Didn't find that feature as helpful as I thought it would be, so I just kind of let the app on my phone let me know when things are actually done. Now that was talking about setup. The other part of this, aside from the peripherals here, is the application itself. So let's see what you can do inside the app. So when you first open the SmartDry app, you are greeted with this screen. If you have your SmartDry actually running, you will see a temperature and dryness level, which will change the longer that your dryer is running. You will also see the clothes down here. It will say whether the dryer is moving and if the clothes are very dry or not. You also have alert for less dry, dry, very dry, and toggles. You can toggle for a notification when the dryer has stopped, if you have a delicate load, or if you want follow-up alerts. You also have a reset notification area, and you've got a time down here at the bottom. Upper corners here, you have a question, which if you tap, will bring you into battery installation video and Echo setup. You have information, which just gives you information about the device and the company. And for assistance, they give you the phone number and the email right there, which is very nice. Last, you have your settings. Here, you can set the individual dryness levels for each: less dry, dry, very dry, and a delicate temperature, whether it's in Fahrenheit or Celsius, enable notifications, sensor name, hub setup, firmware, and installation instructions. So if I were to select firmware and it was plugged in, it would check and see if there was new firmware. I will say, with the dryer selection here for dry, this was actually set at 83 degrees. I found that I needed to raise it 1 degree to 84 to actually notify me correctly when my clothes were actually dry. I found that my socks around the necks were not totally dry when it was set on the default settings, but all of that is customizable. So if your dryer is different than my dryer, you can actually adjust that as needed. It is a very simple app. Again, this is super user friendly, and I appreciate that, and I feel that you will too. So here, I just have it set to send me push notifications to the phone when it is done drying and when the dryer has stopped. I disabled the Alexa notifications because I did not find them as useful as I thought I would. So the whole idea behind SmartDry here is to not only make your dryer smart in that it tells you when it's done, it's also to save on either electrical usage or gas usage. So realistically, how well does this work? Well, let me tell you, I was surprised at how much of a reduction in my gas usage I saw in the first month of using this. Now, I will say that my home is heated by gas, and the other big appliance that uses gas is my dryer. And as you can see on the screen here, while I did have a 10-degree drop in the temperature outside, the amount that this dropped should not be this steep for just a 10-degree drop in temperature outside. The heat in my place would still be kicking on quite regularly. So the only other thing that I did was use the SmartDry here to slow down or cut down on the amount of gas that my dryer was using. I also did incrementally cut the amount of electrical use that I was using by the aid of the SmartDry here. So the question then becomes, the benefit of using this is plain to see. However, how much does it cost to power this device? Well, if the device is just plugged in and idling, it actually uses almost negligible amounts of power, as you can see here. And when you actually are querying the device, it uses 0.6 watts. So again, if you're like me, you unplug this when you're not using it, you save yourself even more electricity that way. So the last question you might have is, how much does something like this cost? Well, I will admit it is a little pricier than most smart home things that you can get. SmartDry setup here is $50 US. Now, keep in mind, I saw a great cost savings in the reduction of gas and electricity that I was using. So realistically, this can pay for itself reasonably quickly. So $50 to make your old dryer smart seems like a great trade-off to me. And this is also a great way to start yourself in maybe home automation. It's not terrible. It doesn't require lots of knowledge to set up. It's almost plug and play, really. So if you haven't gotten the impression as of yet, I really like the SmartDry setup here, minus the Amazon Echo integration. Don't really see a need for it myself, but maybe you do. And again, for $50 to know when your dryer's done, to know when your clothes are actually dry, it'll pay for itself reasonably quickly. And this is your step into home automation. So I have been Wanderer 001. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the area below. And as always, thanks for watching.